All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our session. Your year-end gifts are already funded. You just haven't found them yet. If you are just joining us, the chat is open, so go ahead and drop a hello. We'd love to see who we have on the session today, what your name is, your organization, and where you're joining us from. And we will get started shortly. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover today. If you are just joining us, go ahead and drop a hello in the chat. We definitely love to engage with you guys in the chat box. Go ahead, let us know in the presentation your thoughts. If you do have any questions during today's presentation, we're going to reserve all questions for the end of the webinar where we're going to do a Q&A. So you can drop questions in the chat, but the best way to make sure we see them is by putting them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And that just looks like a little Q&A icon. So welcome to our session today. Your year-end gifts are already funded. You just haven't found them yet. To go ahead and get started, I'm going to introduce our panel. First, we have Michael Buckley, who is the Managing Partner and Fundraising Team Lead at the Kilo Group. How are you today, Michael?
Hi, Gabby. Great. Thanks so much for having me here, and hello to everybody who's joining us from here, there, and everywhere.
And we have Chris Fink, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Ariva. How are you, Chris? Thanks for being here.
I'm well, Gabby. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for hosting this and putting us together. And thanks for Michael to Michael for being here, and thanks to everyone for joining today. Appreciate it.
And my name is Gabriella Salemi. I'm our Director of Marketing here at Ariva, and I will be the moderator for today's session. To go ahead and get started, we want to start by asking you all a few questions just to help us gear the presentation towards who we have on. First, we would love to know, how would you best describe your organization's fundraising activity during the summer months? That poll should pop up on your screen. Let us know if you're not seeing it. We actively cultivate and engage donors year-round. We slow down but maintain regular donor outreach. We focus primarily on events and stewardship. We largely pause major fundraising efforts until fall. We use summer to focus on internal planning, organization, and preparing for year-end. So go ahead, I'll give you a few more seconds to put some answers in there. All right, so looking at the results, 45% of you are actively cultivating and engaging donors year-round, which is great to see. And then 22% are focusing more on internal operations. Then we've got a few doing slow down their donor outreach. All right. Next question, we would love to know, how confident are you that you know who your best year-end donor prospects are today? So you have a few options: very confident, somewhat confident, not very confident, and we don't currently have a formal donor pipeline. Whatever option you choose, we're going to have some great strategies to show you today where you can implement them no matter where you are in this cycle. All right, so 48% of you are somewhat confident, 33% not very confident, 13% are very confident, and 6% do not have a formal donor pipeline. This next one, you can choose multiple answers. What is your biggest concern heading into year-end fundraising? Is it finding new donors, identifying major gift opportunities, donor retention and engagement, limited staff and resources? Maybe it's all of the above. or other. And if you do choose other, let us know in the chat what that concern is. Right, give a few more seconds. Looking at the results, majority of you say all of the above. 30% are struggling with finding new donors, 32 identifying major gift opportunities, along with donor engagement, and 21% limited staff time and resources. And the last question before I pass it over to our panel, how does your organization currently identify potential major donors? And you can select multiple from this list as well too. So is it wealth screening and prospect research tools, staff or board recommendations, giving history and engagement data? Maybe you don't have a formal process, then you have the option for other. Okay. So 71% of you are looking at giving history and engagement data. 55% are using staff or board recommendations. 36% are using wealth screening or prospect research tools. And 38% do not have a formal process. And a few of you are doing something other than that. All right, I'll pass it over to Michael and Chris.
Thanks, Gabby. And most importantly, thank you to everybody who participated in that poll because it will really help us to craft a better presentation over our time together in the next 60 minutes or so. As Gabby said in the introduction, my name is Mike Buckley, part of the team of the Clo Group, a nonprofit consulting firm based in upstate New York, in Albany, the capital. I've spent my entire career in the profession of fundraising, believe it or not, starting as a student phonathon caller as an undergraduate student, and shout out to a very dear friend of mine who is on this webinar who was a phonathon caller with me. So glad to see you in the chat. But we're going to talk about how to maximize the rest of the calendar year. For some of your organizations, you're focusing in on ending your fiscal year, which ends on June 30th, which is basically tomorrow. But for most of you, you're thinking about the calendar year. What I want to really stress, and we're going to use some data and some good tips and thoughts and some of the information that's in the Ariva system as well. What I really want to stress is that now is the time to really think about donor engagement. The last quarter of the fiscal year is so heavy in terms of donor engagement, donor stewardship, and most importantly, donor solicitation. From Giving Tuesday, which is, I believe, this year it's in December again because Thanksgiving is late. From Giving Tuesday until December 31st, about 25% of all annual giving comes in to nonprofit organizations. And let's be real, let's be honest, those are exhausting times for us in the profession of fundraising. So let's use this time in the summer to really do some internal strategy and have conversations with our donors. When you look at the data, less than 5% of all fundraising happens in the month of July and August. Now, honestly, I think that's because people aren't asking. And there's research out there. In fact, Giving Tuesday is doing great work around looking at some research that proves that it's not that people aren't giving, it's that we're actually not asking them over the summer. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more today. But I also want you to be thinking about how many of your donors, how many of the individuals in your prospect pool have you not heard from for the last 60 days? Let's use this time this summer to drive forward. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the 5 things that we're going to cover in today's session. I want you to take away certainly all of this good information. Of course, I'm a little biased because I put it together, but we're going to talk about finding the donors that you have been overlooking. Who are those donors that you're just sort of taking for granted that you know they're going to give? Fundraising is the perfect blend of art and science. And I think sometimes we imbue our feelings and our thoughts into fundraising a little bit more than we should. So, who are those donors that you've been overlooking that you just either assume are going to give to your organization because they always do, or you know that they always give in the month of September, so you know they're coming? all of those donors deserve some type of engagement right now. So we'll look and see who are the hidden gems in your donor database. Reading intent signals before it's too late. Let's talk about what are those items that you can find in your database. And I know Chris is going to do a great job of showing those on our call or talking to those on our call about where it exists in the Ariva database. Uh, what are those indicators of interest? What are those signs that people are into what you're doing and want to support your work and deserve to be engaged with right now? If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's presentation, it would be number three. We're going to talk about the pipeline five. For those of you who are in complex organizations or you're a sole development office, you're that development office of one, you may have a portfolio of hundreds of people. When I was a major gift officer at a college, I had 225 people in my portfolio. That is just way too many. I will spare you nerding out on some research that exists out there about um, how many people you can actually manage in a portfolio. But let's talk about who are those five people that at 4:05 Eastern time, when you get off this call, you're going to make a list and you're going to come together with an actionable plan for those five in between now and the end of the year. We're going to talk about using the summer to do some prospect researching, refreshing your data, and maybe your wealth screening. And then we're also going to talk about finding signals that tell us that your donors are ready for that ask to be asked by the end of this calendar year.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, Michael, I'm on the opposite end of the country from you and Gabby. My name's Chris Fink. I'm COO of Ariva. I'm out here in San Francisco, California. It's great to be here. And so before Michael dives in, I want to take a few seconds to frame what Ariva is going to add to the conversation today. Michael's going to give you the framework, the what to look for and how to think about your pipeline. And what we're going to do throughout the session is show you where all of that data information will live and how it's managed in your whatever you're using, your technology stack, your donor management solution. Because the best pipeline strategy in the world really it doesn't move gifts if it stays on a whiteboard, right, or in your head. So I will add some color as we go through this. All right, Michael, I'll pass it back to you.
Let's talk about finding the donors that you have been overlooking. I didn't write down, I was trying to feverishly write down the answers to the poll. I was not prepared. But I know there's a good majority of individuals who said that they were trying to find new donors. One of the things that was worrying them about the rest of the calendar year was the need to find new donors. I'm really going to sort of submit and challenge you to not go looking for new donors that are out in your ecosystem. Go and look in your donor database for those donors who are already engaging with you. So often, a lot of the work of the Clo Group is in the animal welfare space. And if I had a dime for every time a member of a board said to me, you know who supports animals? Oprah supports animals. If I had a dime for every time I heard that, I would not work anymore, to be honest.
Mhm.
Oprah's great. I'm sure she's very philanthropic to a key number of animal welfare organizations, but odds are she's not going to support your organization. So instead of chasing that, that unicorn, look into your donor database and look to see who are those folks who are already active and are being cultivated. Who are those donors who have given to you more often? We're going to talk about that in a second. But I really want to drive home the point that your next major gift are those individuals that are already in your donor database, those who you've engaged with, those who you've cultivated. They're not outliers that you have to go and find. Somebody said to me, one of the things I love about fundraising is there's so many old sayings. And for those of you who have been in this space for more than a few years, you know all of them. But, for us, somebody said to me early in my career, don't find new donors, chase the ones you already have. Think about that for a second. Don't just go out into the woods and try to find a new donor who may give to your organization. Run after the donors that you know you already have. For those donors who might be new prospects, or they're not donors because their prospects. Think about challenging your board to use this summer to engage with those donors, to cultivate them, to qualify them. But for you as a professional fundraiser, I think it's really important that you're looking at your donor database and finding the hidden gems that are in there. Let's talk about the five types of donors. You'll hear the five theme throughout today because I feel like five is a very manageable number. Five types of donors that are often overlooked in most portfolios. Of course, lapsed donors, those who gave to you 2 years ago, haven't given to you this year. And let me pause for a second and also point out the term major donor is really subjective. So for those of us who have worked in the higher education space, if you weren't rated at $100,000 when I was a major gift officer at a college, you were not in my portfolio. When I went into work in animal welfare as a practitioner, it was $500. So major donor is a really subjective term. I don't want you to get sort of bogged down by that, but just think about those donors that are giving more. They're giving more than the average to your organization, and they're making an impact. But that said, five types of donors that are overlooked. Certainly those who've given before and have not consistently given. Those are individuals that you should really be looking at. But the two types that the two on this list that I really want to point out is those donors who have upgraded. So they're $500 to $2,500 donors for 2+ consecutive years. So they're giving differently than your average donor in your donor database, and they've never been asked for more. So look at that tier. Those donors, and that's a wide range, of course, but those donors who have given in between $500 and $2,500 for 2 consecutive years are donors that you should key into for a major ask. And again, define major ask, however it means at your organization, um, by the end of the year. The other thing that I will point out, certainly high capacity donors, you're going to use a wealth screening. They're going to tell you how much money they think they have. They're not giving. Of course, those are important too, to have those conversations. Same with event attendees, those individuals who've given to your or have come to your event over and over, but haven't given yet. But the other key untapped resource, I think, are those long tenure mid-level donors who have been giving to you for 5+ consistent years that you've never engaged with. They give every single year, regardless of how often you mail to them, when you mail to them, how you ask them, all of that, all of that strategy that you employ. They give the same amount for the last 5 years. Look at those donors. Those donors are telling you that they really like what you do and you are top of mind. So that pack of donors, I think, are great people to also be engaging with.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what Michael just described are really there are five segments that should already exist and be able to easily pulled from your CRM database right now, or not next month, right? Because those should be not difficult to surface. And if you're having issues with it, let us know. But each one of those donor types Michael mentions maps directly to a filter or a query in your database, and lapsed donors, lapsed major donors. You should have a recency and a gift filter that you can gift recency threshold filter that you can pull on for this in your database. We have actually a specific report for surfacing lapse owners, and our solution makes it very easy to pull exactly what Michael's talking about. And then regarding the high capacity, low ask donors, does your donor management solution have integration with wealth screening service to be able to get that information and surface those records as well? If not, you should find a solution like ours that does, because it'll help you easily identify those gaps between high capacity and low asks. And that is where your overlooked gifts are hiding, right? And if you can't pull those segments, that's not you're not going to be able to execute on this strategy, and that's a problem. It's a data and a technology problem, not a strategy problem, right? That particularly that last that last item that Michael mentioned, that 5 years of a consecutive giving, or let's say anyone who's given 5 years over the past 10 years, that can be really tricky. We actually have a report that gets you that very easily, but if you don't have a solution to pull that out, you could spend hours or days trying to get that information. So make sure you are able to get that out of your database. All right, if you go to the next slide. Just to put to a finer point on segmentation in general in databases and why it's important and why the strategies work, in terms of being precise about who you're targeting and how and really tailoring your messages and campaigns to demonstrate that you really understand who you're talking to and the message resonates, because the messages will not resonate if you aren't being targeted in your communications with people and understanding how people are engaged with your organization, because it could be more than just one level, and how people are engaged with you and are affiliated with your organization, right? The biggest mistakes I think nonprofits make is trying to speak to all of their constituents, with one message. But the reality is your best owners share common traits. But by using the prospect research tools that we talked about and Michael's talking about, you can pinpoint who's most likely to give based on information you have in your own database, but also that external information they're giving you in terms of demographics, values, capacity, inclination to give to organizations like yours. And it shifts those fundraising efforts from a guessing game to a really more strategic approach, where you're focusing your time and resources on the donors that are most aligned with your mission and have the most capacity to give, right? Because your donor database it's one of the most valuable assets you're going to have. I love the way that Michael um, is talking about how data is so important, and I think it's often overlooked. And there's the struggles I see on with organizations that we're talking to every week. It's the data, and they're struggling not only to maintain it in a way that helps them surface the information they need, and to support their strategy, but also just to maintain it too. So, but anyway, by analyzing those patterns to giving history, retention rates, preferred communication channels, or even tracking that, you really can uncover those actionable insights. All right, we'll get to the next slide, Gabby. Let Michael continue.
Thanks, Chris. So we spent the first topic talking about who's hiding in your database, and just to echo what Chris said about the importance of a database. I know there are still organizations out there, some are probably on this call, that are using Excel to create a donor as their donor database, or using QuickBooks tied to their finances as a donor database. Get a donor database, invest in a donor database, and invest in the time to keep it current, because your organization, as Chris said, is only as good as the data that you have that you can access. But let's talk about reading signals of intent before it's too late. I love this slide, not only because I created it, but because I think it provides you a great opportunity to think about a scorecard for some of your donors. I've listed some activities that I think, other than giving, will show that donors are interested in what you're doing. I always say to my clients, the secret to being a fundraiser is to think as somebody who's a donor. So we all give to organizations. We all have our top three or our top five priorities. Think about how you want to be treated. Think about how you engage with your top organizations that you support. Think about what gets you excited about supporting that organization, and ask those questions about your prospects. So instead of just looking at donors who have been giving more or more often, think about other indicators of them being into the work that you're doing. Really, as a scorecard, I encourage you to pick 25 people in your prospect pool and sort of use this scorecard to show how to really qualify your prospects for how much they might be interested in what you're doing. Just want to highlight four things on this. Under email engagement, hopefully your system allows you to track those people who are opening up your emails. If you have a Gmail account like me and most of the world, you know that a lot of our newsletters are going to the other folders. So you have to hunt for that information. If your donors and prospects are hunting for information or hunting for your newsletter to show that they are interested in the work you're doing, that to me indicates that they are very supportive of your cause and might be someone to engage with. The other thing is clicks on those impact story links. Not only are they opening up your email, but they are also clicking on the links that are driving to your website. Spontaneous gift under giving patterns, gave before they were even asked. If you have a donor who's given sort of regularly and then they make one random gift, think about engaging with that donor. And the most important thing on this scorecard is the bottom right. Those donors who have said or have recommended to their friends and family that they give to your organization. All of these, I think, are indicators of them being interested in the work you do, but there are some there that are more important. The other thing I'll add before we go over and hand it back to Chris, under event attendance, think about using the summer to create a leadership briefing, inviting some of your donors to a very casual opportunity to connect in an informal way with with leadership at your organization, whether it's you, your executive director, program director, somebody that there's an opportunity maybe just to have coffee at your facility if that works for your organization, just to invite some donors and see who wants to learn more. So instead of just looking at data, excuse me, just looking at giving data, look at patterns of behavior.
Yeah, I love it, Michael. And the Michael just talked about the four categories of intent signals to watch, and I think the practical challenge for most organizations that I see is that those intent signals are real, but they're scattered. And your event attendance is living in one place, your email opens are over in their email marketing platform, your giving history is in another solution entirely, and connecting those dots can be very difficult, right, with that disparate data. So here, one signal in isolation doesn't tell you much, right? So if someone opens an email, that's awareness, but when that same person, opened your last five emails, clicked through to your impact story, attended your spring gala, increased their gift last year, you're starting to see patterns, right? And that pattern is intent, and intent is what tells you that donor is really ready for a real conversation. So the question to ask is, if you pull up one of your top five prospects, could you see all that activity in one place, right? Or would you have to go looking for it across several different systems? That's who we're talking to people like that every week, and that's the struggle I see. And managing those fragments of information and it doesn't close your gifts, right? So the organizations that move fastest on intent signals are the ones who've built typically a single source of truth, right, for that activity, constituent activity, right, and where everything like Michael just described flows into one record automatically. So you're being more efficient, and you can see that those patterns do reveal themselves, right, rather than someone requiring someone to go find them, right. So the difference really is visible when everything lives in one place. But I'll let Michael keep going.
Thanks, Chris. So also thinking about what other indicators of readiness exist out there. I think a lot of maybe that's a harsh generalization to make. I think there is a significant number sometimes of nonprofit organizations who really use that gut feeling to tell them when a donor is going to give more or could be a major gift prospect. And there's certainly a place for that. But we always encourage our clients to look at three different things as they're trying to determine whether or not a donor is ready to make a major gift. And again, major gift being a very subjective term for your organization. Capacity. Do they have the financial capacity to make that gift? Have they given a prior major gift to your organization? Have they given a major gift to another organization? Have they increased their giving? Have you updated their wealth screening? I have a love-hate relationship with wealth screening, and Chris and Gabby and I talked about this on our pre-call. I think sometimes we rely on it too much. I think sometimes it can be inaccurate, but I do think that it helps you get that funnel a little bit tighter. So, have you well screened your donors? Do you know what your major donors may have capacity to do? Again, just remember, just because they have it doesn't mean they're going to give it to your organization. But have you well screened your donors to help you determine capacity? And are there other things happening in the lives of your prospects that might influence a gift? Really, the only way to find that out is to connect with them and have those conversations one on one and build a long-term relationship. So, if you're looking for something to do this summer, I would encourage you to really connect with your donors just to check in with them. Not a lot of donors may, summer's a busy time. Donors may not want to meet with you, but there's a great opportunity to set the stage for future conversations and just to find out what's happening in your donors' lives. Certainly, engagement. Organizations don't have organizations that uh, are not engaging with their donors are not going to be successful. So think about what that engagement has been, and that's a two-way street. It's not just donors interacting with you, it's you interacting with the donors. Are you seeing that donors are trending up? They're engaging more often with you. They're showing up to that wonderful leadership briefing that you're going to do that I just gave you that great idea. Are they engaging with you in different ways? Are they opening up your email? Are they responding to your direct mail? Are they reading your newsletter? Are they posting on social media or responding to your posts on social media, I should say? There's all these indicators that will tell you like, hey, they're really interested in what we're doing. Let's engage with them a little bit more. And think about the depth of a relationship. Think about the depth of the relationship that was required for those of you who are or who have ever been married to get engaged to somebody. I never asked anybody for a major gift on our first visit, and I did not ask my wife to marry me on our first date. It's a process, it's a relationship. As you're growing forward with your donors, think about the depth of your relationship with those donors. I want to point out fundraisers on the relationship depth column. Number two, fundraisers know what donors care about. The only way for you to find out what a donor cares about is to actually ask them what they care about. And that takes time. That takes multiple meetings. That takes the building of a strong relationship. To grow your major donor program, it's going to take a lot more tactical work than just a direct mail piece. I love direct mail. That's how I came up. Direct mail, it's very transactional. It's not really relationship based. So use the summer. If we're thinking about how do you get to the end of the calendar year with a good major gift pipeline, use the summer to really build those strong relationships with your donors. And let's talk about the one thing. I mean, I hope you take away all these wonderful ideas that Chris and I are sharing with you. But if there's any one thing that I would hope you would remember on your drive home or walk home today, it is this concept of the pipeline five. I've been, as I said, in the profession of fundraising now for more than 2 decades, and in the consulting space for almost 10. And I'm always asked by clients, like, what's the right size of my portfolio? Or how many, we're going to hire a leadership gift officer, Mike, like, how many people should we assign them? That's a conversation that has to be had and should be had. And a lot of it is very, based on skill set and organization and portfolios and all of that. But what I would really encourage you to do is really to chunk it out in as small a manageable number as possible. I will submit that maybe 5 people is too small, but I'm suggesting 5 at any time. So after this, you'll have a little homework assignment that I trust you will do. After this webinar, write down the 5 people in your portfolio that you want to get a gift from or you plan to get a gift from by the end of the calendar year. Who are those 5? What is your strategy? We'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately, instead of looking at the 200 people in your donor portfolio or the 500 people who have been donating to your organization, look at just 5. You're going to get probably 2 amazing responses, you're going to get two mediocre responses, and you're going to get one that is going to make you question why you ever got into this profession, and that's okay. So if you have five, I think it makes it a little bit more manageable and ultimately allows you to focus on five people at any given time. And here's the homework assignment. So for those five people, I really want you, and I'll just answer the question that I'm haven't been reading the chat, but I'm sure it's in the chat. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, you'll get a copy of the recording. Yes, you'll get a copy of the slides. And you can reach out to me directly if you need any more information. But for the five people that you're going to pick and be a little strategic about it, I want you to write down a framework and answer these five questions for your pipeline five. Where is the funded gift? A specific dollar amount that is going to be tied to a specific project, not a range or not general support. I don't think there are any clients on this call, current clients of mine, and if there are, forgive me. Nothing drives me more crazy when a chief philanthropy officer or an executive director says, I think we're going to ask them for a $10,000 just cuz. That's not a strategy. Let's really dive into what are we asking them for, how much, and for what project. In order to be successful, you will have to have done the work to find out what excites them. And that's certainly what we do as professional fundraisers. So step one is where is the gift? What's the specific gift amount? What is the project? And what is the specific gift amount? And what is the project? When will you find it? When are you going to start to have this conversation with people, with this donor about this project? It can't be December 31st. In fact, I would submit that it really should be sooner rather than later, but do the work now to have a target of maybe connecting with people in person by Labor Day. I'm admitting summer's a little bit of a busy time, especially for those of us in the Northeast where we get a very, very short summer, it seems. But do the homework now, do the legwork now to begin to cultivate that relationship with a target of maybe getting to meet with folks one-on-one once Labor Day comes. What signal is going to open the door? This is really important. What is a prospect going to tell you that makes you believe that they're interested? It could be as something as I'm going to call them and ask them to visit, and they're going to call me back and say yes, and ta-da, that's the signal that opens the door. Maybe the signal that opens the door is they're responding to an appeal, you get that gift, and you call them to say thank you. Instead of making it just a cold call, what is that signal that's going to get you to say, you know what? They might want to talk to me. This is a really good way for me to make that connection. Who helps you find it? Good fundraising is done as with teams of good people and partners who will help you get to this prospect and get to this gift. It could be a board member who knows this individual. It could be the program director of this project that you know that this donor may be interested in. Maybe it's just you. I would really encourage it not to be just you, but it could just be you. So who helps you find this gift? And what could hide it? That's a very nice way of saying what could make this gift not be successful. What could hide this gift back into your donor database that you're not gonna and you're not gonna get it. Known risks, and most importantly, what's your contingency plan? Write this out for your top five for your pipeline five. Create this framework and then start to do the work to drive forward.
Yeah, I love Michael's framework because it's so specific and it's exactly what most pipelines are missing, really. But I wanted to add to Michael's framework here. You know, the pipeline five only works if it lives somewhere real, right? If it's a note on your desk, or it says keeps it's institutional memory or a mental list, it's not going to survive. So each of Michael's five questions map directly to something you should be logging within your donor database, right? The ask amount should be tied to a specific project. The target date should be a task. The intent signal should be an activity note with follow-up date. The co-asker should be assigned a link. The risk flag should be documented. If you can answer all five of Michael's questions and document it inside your donor relationship management system with dates and names attached, that pipeline will be real. And if you can't, it's just going to be wishful thinking and wasted effort, right? So, all right, Michael. Michael's going to take us through what's the next 90 days will look like with these five in motion.
So I really like numbers, so thank you, Chris. So we talked about five. Now we're going to talk about 90 days. For those of you who have followed me and my team for a little bit, every year we do what we call the final countdown, which is 100 days to the end of the calendar year. So I'm all about making what feels like a big strategy into as many manageable bits and pieces as possible. Talked a little bit about this before, about the idea of setting a goal for your pipeline five, of having those conversations at or about Labor Day in early September. And what's the work that you need to do in July and August to get yourself there? So you're gonna do that personal touch point. You're going to reactivate and reconnect or deepen. You're not going to ask for money. You and I both know, for those of us who have been in this space for more than a few days, so very little of what we do as professional fundraisers is actually ask for money. It's all about building relationships. Products like your donor database are going to help you make informed decisions, but there's only so far that your donor database or good data can get you. You have to get out of your office and you have to raise money. A desk is a very dangerous place to try to raise money from. So let's use July to see who of your pipeline five are interested in engaging with you. What are those signals that are telling you, okay, these are people that I need to really strategize around in between now and the end of the calendar year? Use August to do some of the paperwork. Think about what that proposal looks like. When are you going to make this ask? If you're involving other people in the conversation, making sure that they're aware of what you're doing. And really, and I cannot stress this enough, think about practicing how you're going to have this conversation. Now, of course, you're building relationships with people. You're not going to go in and say, "Hi, I'm Mike. Thanks so much for meeting with me on behalf of the organization. Would you consider a gift of $1 million?" That's not going to happen. But practice this language. For those of you who have been in this space for a little bit of time, you know the importance of role playing. You know the importance of understanding what is your elevator speech? What are you going to say to the donor? So I really encourage you not only to practice what you're going to say or think about how these conversations may go, but also be as up to speed on the project or program that you're asking donors to support. Learn about it as much as you can because donors are going to ask you questions about it. And then use September to really go in to solicitation mode. Use the rest of the year to bring that gift to a close by the end of December. The last thing I'll point out on this slide that I think is really important is every conversation has a clear, documented next step. This is why we call it a prospect pipeline and not a prospect hodgepodge. It is a pipeline of activities and things that are going across a continuum. So make sure that you're documenting those conversations. Make sure that you know what the next steps are for your prospect and your organization, and put it somewhere and do it. To Chris's point, whether it's a little post-it note on your desk or you're using some cool AI tool to remind you to do things, make sure that you're doing it. Get yourself into the habit of doing the follow-up that you need. Let's talk about putting prospect research to work this summer. I think I saw a quick note in the chat, somebody talking about wealth screening. Certainly happy to answer any questions about that a little bit later. But when we talk about prospect research, it doesn't always have to be the traditional wealth screening. A lot of it can just be anecdotal information that we have. Think about doing a life event scan, looking at LinkedIn. Are you connected on your LinkedIn to some of your top donors? Are you following local media for companies in your area? Are you setting up Google alerts for people? I know that sounds a little Big Brother, but it's a good way to do it and doesn't have any cost associated with it. The other thing that I will just add in this slide in the interest of time is program alignment update. Have new organizational priorities emerge that better match with what you know about donor passions. This really requires us as professional fundraisers to know what's going on in our organization. It requires us to know what's going on with our donors that might get them excited to support our organization. So as you're using the summer to do a lot of great things, think about using this time to refresh your prospect research. Again, it doesn't have to be a costly service. It really can just be you spending some time doing some Google searching, but also make sure that you know exactly what's happening at your organization. And just a quick little example of what this could look like. I think we actually, this is the exact, this example is true to an organization that I worked with this time last year, where we just assumed, based on what we could find, that this donor probably had about a $25,000 ask because they had given $25,000 before, and we were going to go back to them and ask for $25,000. But what we discovered through a very quick Google search is that they had sold their part of the company, and that changed everything. So it didn't require us to do a huge refresh. It didn't require us to invest a ton of money. It required us to Google search this person's name and their business to update to update information. And to be fair, it was a very small article in a very small trade publication that we found, but ultimately it totally changed our strategy. So think about spending some time this summer doing things like this because there's certainly a little bit of luck in the art of fundraising, and this is where most of that luck can come in.
Yeah, all such great information, Michael. And I do agree with you. You know, prospect research is so incredibly important, and well screening services do have their place. And I do share some of your reservations, though, Michael, about them too. You know that some of the well screening tools out there and that we partner with, they're great in terms of being able to get a sense of inclination to give and capacity to give and a lot of other indicators out there, demographics, et cetera, what assets people own. But sometimes they skew a little too heavy on the real estate side. And as you all know, if you live on, where I live or where Gabby or Michael lives, just because you have a $1 or $2 million house doesn't mean you have a lot of money to give. So you do have to be careful about what the types of data that you're looking at and how to interpret it, and try and get a well-rounded set of information, right, to base your prospecting on. But ultimately the goal is right. You just don't want to leave money on the table when you're asking people for money, and so I think you need all those pieces of information, the data that you have that you can leverage, using that recency and frequency and size of gifts that Michael was talking about in your own database, and then the well screening and the connectivity. Who do they know, and are you tracking that in your database? And their characteristics and their preferences and their interests and their values. Are you gathering that information? And Michael touched a little bit too on some of these AI tools out there. They're incredibly powerful and slightly frightening, but I mean, there's a lot of information you can glean. And there's a product out there called Perplexity that I was using the other day, and just Google yourself and see what comes up. You can get a lot of information. So don't be hesitant to leverage any of those, because other organizations will, right? But we've got a few more slides. I'll let Michael keep going here.
And yes, and so your comment, Chris, about the real estate is very true. I think it's really important to point out I do not live in a $1 to $2 million house, but here in New York, real estate is a little skewed and can be a little difficult to land that plane. Anyway, so one thing or three things really that I will encourage you to do before Friday is think about these three things. Certainly I'm going to jump to number two. Write down your pipeline five. Who are those five that you're going to focus in on? Write out the framework, do the rubric, start to do the work, signal intent. Who are those donors, or what do you need those donors to do that will sort of signal to you that you need to engage with them? Is it respond to your email? Is it answer your phone call? Is it, we sent them a solicitation via direct mail. If they respond, I'm going to call and say thank you. That will be my signal to engage. So do that. The other thing that I would encourage you to do, which I didn't talk about at the top, was to run a quick database audit looking for those overlooked donors. So look at those donors who gave in calendar year 24, excuse me, in calendar year 25, but have not yet given in calendar year 26. Look at those donors who have given to you for 3 consecutive years. Who's given 24, 25, 26, or 23, 24, 25? Who are those donors who are showing you they are really interested and loyal to your organization? And don't overlook event attendees. Who has come to your event and who has not given? Most event attendees will not become donors, but do some homework to figure out who's come a few years, who may be really interested in what you're doing, and who clearly supports your mission year after year.
Yeah, so these three things that Michael asked you to do before Friday, I just want to add another layer. When you go run that database audit, can you actually pull those segments in your system right now? When you write down your pipeline five names, do those five donor records have ask amounts and dates and next steps documented? And when you identify the intent signal you'll respond to first, is that signal being tracked somewhere, or is it just living in your memory, which you don't want, right? Which we talked about before. So those three questions will tell you immediately whether your technology stack is set up to really to support this strategy that Michael has taught you today. So and if it's not going to help you support that, then give us a call and we'll have a call. Not a sales call, just a working session to talk how your system is and isn't working for you. All right, Gabby. Okay, I'll just talk a little bit just before we get to Q&A about Ariva, who we are. We have been working with a nonprofit industry for over 35 years. We have over 6,000 clients, we've done over 30,000 live virtual hybrid events. Our software was built specifically for the nonprofit industry. As you see, we have quite a few organizational national partners that we've been vetted by. And if you go to the next slide, Gabby, we see, and like I've mentioned earlier, we talk to clients every week, organizations that are struggling with the technology they're using to manage their constituents, manage their fundraising efforts, and we see a lot of, on average, about organizations using 3 or 4 different solutions to do what they're trying to do, and typically we can provide one solution that will do it all for them. If you go to the next slide, Gabby, and as you can see, there's a lot of here to talk about. I won't talk about it all right now, but if you're having any issues with your existing solutions to manage your constituents and your fundraising efforts, please give us a call and we can help you. The next slide is just going to be sort of a graphical representation of all the different data pieces we can help you with. All right.
Thanks, Chris. And if you'd like to learn more about Ariva software, even for a free consultation, go ahead and hit yes, and someone from our team will be in touch. And Michael, do you want to share a little bit about the Kilo Group?
Oh, sure. In a very quick few seconds we have left. Yeah, so the Kilo Group is a nonprofit consulting firm. We have as I said, a particular niche in the animal welfare space, but have been fortunate enough to have clients across multiple areas within the nonprofit space and have done work both here in the United States and up into Canada. Most of our work is centered around capital campaigns, feasibility studies, but most importantly, capacity building, getting your organization in shape to do something great and bold and exciting. And as I said, I've spent my entire career in the profession of fundraising and cannot thank everyone enough who's on this call for doing this work because it is hard work and we're all in this together.
Thanks, Michael. And there's a poll up on your screen now. If you'd like to learn more about the Kilo Group or get in touch with Michael, we'll send him your info. Just go ahead and hit yes. All right, and we've got 5 minutes left in the webinar, so let's get to the Q&A. Um, all right. So one of the biggest challenges I'm finding, and it may be fairly specific to our area of the country from what I've heard at other nonprofits, is getting even engaged donors to respond to emails, phone calls, etc., to try and engage more deeply. They give, but it's nearly impossible to get those deeper engagements. Any tips?
Mm.
As I said in the opening, I'm a proud former student phone-a-thon caller. I think the value of a phone call and leaving a voicemail message cannot be understated, and it is a much more intentional um, touch point than I think an email is. My recommendation is to send a letter to people who you want to get in touch with, and there's a great book out there. It's called Asking, the 59-minute guide to everything board members, volunteers, and staff need to know to secure the gift by Jerry Panis, who is a wonderful, well-known, well-respected consultant in our space. And within there, there's a few good examples of letters that you can send before you call. I think that helps sort of open up the door. I would certainly encourage you to stick with trying, don't harass, because that's not okay. But just remember, donors act when they want to act, not when we want them to act.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. My relationships and trying to avoid that personal touch is going to make that difficult to make those connections. I mean, I understand people are worried about how much bandwidth they have, and I can't call every donor, et cetera. But that's where segmentation can come in, and you can help identify and automate things. And just worked with an organization that we automate a report that gets sent to the executive director every Monday that this lands in her inbox. So she has a list to call of everyone who gave a certain amount of money or more the prior week. You can use technology to help you do those things and surface the people that you should be spending more time with and making more of those personal connections with. And also the segmentation we talked about too can lend itself to the more effective messaging to those segments, right? So that the message resonates more and they're more likely to respond because it isn't just a generic, thank you or an email or a letter, whatever you're sending out, right?
Chris. Another question that came in, does long tenure gifts mean monthly donors as well?
Yes, absolutely. Monthly donors are an untapped resource. If you don't have a branded monthly giving program or recurring giving program, because it doesn't have to be monthly, certainly get something pretty quickly together. That is not my area of expertise, but there are great folks in the space that have that knowledge. If someone's giving to you every single month, um, that's an indicator that they are really interested in your organization. Also, keep in mind there's an inherent risk when credit cards do eventually expire, that if you don't have a relationship with those donors, there's really no reason for them to re-up unless they're really still passionate. So build relationships with your monthly donors now, so that when those hiccups come, that they know who to call. It can become very transactional, almost like a subscription to Hulu, and we don't want that in our space. So, absolutely, those long, consistent donors, monthly donors are number one on that list.
Yeah, exactly. Everything you said, totally. Yeah, I mean, and it's one of the bright spots in the Giving USA report. Monthly giving is going up, so that's good. But the churn is high. And like Michael said, if you don't keep them engaged, they'll drop. Within the first 3 months, a high percentage they do drop because they don't feel as engaged as they should with you. So communicating with them, and like Michael said too, like you don't just throw a recurring donation page on your website and call it a day. You have to brand it. You have to put some effort into it. You have to bring awareness to it and drive people to sign up, and also have technology on the back end to not make it onerous. You don't be manually charging these cards every month, right? So, yep.
Thanks, Chris. And then there were a few questions in the chat about that book that Michael had shared. I just posted a link to it for Amazon, so you can go and get a better look at it if you are interested in getting that. Well, those were all the questions that we had. Um, today's session is recorded, so you're going to get a copy of the recorded webinar as well as the PowerPoint slides following the webinar, as well as if you requested any outreach, we'll make sure to pass that along to the Ariva team or to Michael so you can get in touch. Michael, Chris, do you have any final comments before we sign off today?
I'll just say 6 months to the end of the year. Don't let summer pass by without putting a plan together for how you're going to make it to December 31st.
Yes. Can't believe it's already halfway through the year. Michael, thank you so much. I just want to thank you, Michael, for being here today and sharing your insights. And thanks, Gabby, for putting us all together. And thanks everybody for attending. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Same
Let
here.
us
Thanks,
know.
Chris. Thanks, Gabby.
Yes, thank you both. Let us know in the chat if you enjoyed today's session. There'll be a survey that comes after to give us your thoughts. You can rate us 5 stars, which is always appreciated. And thank you, everyone. And we hope to see you on our next Ariva webinar. Make it a great day.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.
Thank you.